Where does Notre Dame fit in? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Please like the video, share the videos out on social media, because if you enjoy the content and the conversation, others will as well. We got Brian Driscoll on the line from Irish Breakdown to, of course, break down the Irish, but go well beyond that in regards to the Notre Dame fit in all of this, which I think is mighty fascinating. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It certainly has been an unusually busy month of July. Usually that's our relax, get ready for fall camp time, but recruiting and realignment and NIL, all these things going on. It's been an incredibly busy month of July.
Brian, I think you would agree that this offseason has been historic, and that was before last week. 12-team college football playoff proposal, transfer portal, NIL, of course, all the things going on. And then, bam, the sledgehammer's dropped, and we've got Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC. So I want to make everybody clear on this, first and foremost, that if you have yet to check out Brian's work concerning Notre Dame football, that's, hey, even if you don't like Notre Dame, if you want to follow the big brands in college football, check out his work, because I want his thoughts on Texas, Oklahoma to the SEC. So he goes well beyond just his analysis of Notre Dame football. He loves college football, and he knows it coast to coast. So how did it hit you? Do you think it's good for college football? What do you think the ramifications will be?
I don't think it's good for college football. I don't think a lot of the things that have happened this summer really have been good for college football. I don't think the one-time transfer rule is good for college football in a lot of ways. I don't think the NIL with no kind of direction at all. I'm a supporter of NIL, but just the no rules, Wild Wild West is not good for college football. It's not good for the young people. And of course, this decision by Texas and Oklahoma, I don't think is good for college football. And it's not even, I'm not even concerned about strengthening the SEC. I mean, the SEC has to do what they think is best for them. And if they think this is going to make their conference better, then go for it. It's more, my issue is more with Texas. And then Oklahoma. Texas being, you're the number one producer of revenue in college football, and yet that's not good enough for you. You've got to just kind of go join the SEC. And then the complaint that you hear from Texas people is, well, we don't make enough money in the Big 12. Well, part of the reason you're not making a better deal is because for the last decade, you've made it very clear you don't want to be in the Big 12. So why? So you've lost a lot of your bargaining power to be able to get a better TV contract. And then for Oklahoma to just kind of let Texas drag them around wherever they want to go, it's like, what kind of rivalry is that? It's just Texas is going to tell you what to do, and you're just going to follow along like, okay, we're going to go to the SEC with you. I don't think it's good for college football. I don't think it's going to be the death of college football. I think the thing that's going to determine the death of college football as we know it is going to be what happens next. And do conferences panic and feel like, oh, geez, we have to move, we have to act now? Or do they say, hey, look, the SEC is going to do what the SEC is going to do. We're going to worry about building up our brand. And then what is that going to look like? I think the Big Ten, for example, I think could be a big leader here. Do they just say, hey, let's go get Kansas and Iowa State, which really does nothing for you from a market standpoint? It may give you a really good basketball program in Kansas, but what is it really going to do for you from a market standpoint? I don't know if that would be a good move if they kind of panic into that. Or are they going to go out and raid the Pac-12? And then, there's just so many things that could happen. And I think what happens next is truly going to determine the true implications of this move. And so I don't know. I think for Oklahoma, they'll be okay. I think they'll do well in the SEC. I think that they're close enough to where they're going to be able to get enough of a recruiting bump to be good. For Texas, maybe they just realize we're not really a relevant football program anyway, so we might as well make the most money that we can. But I think they're going to struggle more than Texas is going to be on the field once this finally happens.
So, of course, Notre Dame's brought up in all this because for the Big Ten in particular to keep up with the SEC, there are no Oklahomas and Texases out there as quote-unquote free agents necessarily. They would have to just rip USC out of the Pac-12 or whomever. Notre Dame is obviously the most uniquely positioned program in the country, has ties to the ACC. Big Ten fans generally, I think overwhelmingly, want Notre Dame, don't necessarily understand the groundwork that's been put in place in the agreements and so forth with the ACC, even though it's obvious for all of us to see. So where do you think Notre Dame's mindset is currently, and what do you think is viable? Knowing that I'm not asking you to forecast the future because it's almost impossible for any of us to figure out where this is headed.
When you look at Notre Dame continues to position themselves to be just fine being independent. And the thing that a lot of people have to understand is Notre Dame is not driven by TV money. That's just not a big thing for them. They are dead set on independence. They've done calculations that show that they're making a lot more money by being independent, overall money from boosters, from all the different revenue streams than they would just from a $20-30 million boost from joining. I mean, look, if you think about it, Mark, until last season when Notre Dame joined the ACC and got actually more money by being in the ACC than they would have been staying independent, Notre Dame, of all 65 Power 5 teams, made the lowest amount of money from TV, lowest of anyone in the Power 5. They're fine with that. That's not what drives Notre Dame. I think that the things that Jack Swarbrick has done with the ACC agreement all the way to 2036, people say, well, if there's a super conference, Notre Dame's going to get left in the cold. Well, no, they're going to have at least 5 ACC opponents until 2036. If the ACC wants to get out of that agreement, they have to pay Notre Dame a lot of money to do so, just like Notre Dame would have to pay the ACC a lot of money and ESPN, or kind of through ESPN, but the ACC a lot of money if they chose to leave and go join the Big Ten or get out of that deal. So I think Notre Dame has positioned themselves well. I don't think they're in any panic over, oh, gee, this happened, so we have to move here. If anything, what we're going to see Notre Dame do is what we saw when the Pac-12 tried to start the super conference movement back in, 2010, 2011 with Texas back then. Notre Dame kind of swung a big stick. Jack Swarbrick, I should say, more so, swung a big stick, did a lot of maneuvering behind the scenes to kind of slow that down and keep that from going. I think the super conferences are inevitable. I just think money in the end, greed and money always wins and carries the day, and that's how people view it. But I don't think – the only thing that I think would force Notre Dame to join a league, Mark, is if for some reason these leagues, when these super conferences start, they start playing like 10 games in conference. Now, all of a sudden, Notre Dame's having a hard time putting a schedule together. That would be the only thing that I think could force Notre Dame's hand, but they're not in any hurry to join a league. And if they do join a league, it's going to be the ACC. It's not going to be the Big Ten.